Senator from Wyoming.
Yield to the senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise today to express my views on the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, also known as New START. This treaty is an extremely important and serious matter. New START significantly impacts America's national security and nuclear deterrent. Now, as a result, I believe that this treaty deserves adequate time in the Senate, time to examine the issues, time to debate the many flawed provisions, and time to vote on all of the amendments offered for consideration. The majority leader should not be piecemealing together segments of time for debate on an issue as important as nuclear arms control. The treaty should not be shortchanged and rushed through the Senate. The treaty should not be jammed together with consideration of a 1,924-page omnibus federal spending bill. The treaty should not be considered during a lame duck session. Consideration of the treaty will require a substantial amount of time in order to sufficiently address its many flaws. Like many of my colleagues, I plan on offering amendments designed to protect our national security. This debate concerns the national security of the United States. It is critical that the United States maintains a strong nuclear deterrent in order to defend our nation and provide assurances to our allies. I have major concerns about the impact the New START will have on Wyoming and on national security. While I have many issues with the New START, I want to address only a few of my major concerns this morning. First, START straitjackets the United States missile defense capabilities. Second, START offers no method to make sure a historically non-compliant Russia state will keep its promises. Third, the approach embodied by START is representative of an outdated and simplistic view of the United States position on the world stage. To begin, I would like to specifically discuss the limitations placed on the United States missile defense by the New START. The treaty signed by President Obama and Russian President Medvedev on April 8, 2010, places explicit limitations on U.S. missile defense. The preamble of the treaty, declares an interrelationship between strategic nuclear offensive weapons and strategic nuclear defensive weapons. It implies the right of Russia to withdraw from the treaty based on U.S. missile defenses that is beyond, quote, current strategic, close quote, capabilities. The treaty preamble, the very preamble of the treaty, gives Russia an opportunity to turn their backs on the treaty at the slightest sign of a shift in American defensive strategy. This language is unacceptable and needs to be removed. Now, I offered an amendment in the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations to strike this language. The White House resists any attempt to amend the preamble. The administration argues it is a non-binding concession to Russia. Well, Russia clearly doesn't see it that same way. They have made it quite clear they consider the preamble legally binding. A Russian foreign minister stated the treaty contained, quote, legally binding linkage between strategic offensive and strategic defensive weapons, end quote, legally binding. The Russians have wanted this language for a long time in order to have grounds to claim that the United States missile defense program violates an international agreement. This type of constraining language is not unique to the preamble. The treaty also places a legally binding limitation on missile defense in Article 5 of the treaty. Article 5 prohibits the transforming of offensive strategic missile launchers into defensive strategic missile launchers. As this nation continues to face threats from around the world, we should not take any action that will hinder our missile defense options. We need to be able to defend ourselves. Just like the preamble, the administration makes excuses as to why they have made concessions to the Russians on our missile defense. The current administration claims that they have no plans to use the missile defense options prohibited under the New START treaty. Well, I believe that placing any constraints on future U.S. defense capabilities should not even be up for debate, let alone placed in a treaty on strategic offensive nuclear weapons. The purpose of New START was to reduce strategic nuclear weapons between the United States and Russia, not limit the ability of the United States to defend ourselves. It is outrageous that the administration would make any concessions to Russia on our national security. The United States must always remain in charge of our own missile defense, not Russia, not any other country. We should not be tying our hands behind our backs and risking the security of our nation and our allies. Russia is trying to force the United States to choose between missile defense and the treaty. The clear choice should always be to protect the ability of the United States to defend ourselves. I believe the administration's decision was a serious mistake. I also have major concerns about the central limits of New START. This treaty is a one-sided agreement aimed at only reducing U.S. strategic nuclear weapons. Russia is currently below the limit for strategic nuclear delivery vehicles under the New START treaty. As a result, Russia will not have to make reductions. The United States will be the only party required to slash its forces. Now, due to loopholes in the treaty counting rules, Russia could deploy more than 1,550 strategic nuclear warheads, go above that ceiling, and still be in compliance with the treaty. Russia may even be able to deploy more than 2,100 warheads under the treaty. Each deployed heavy bomber, regardless of the actual number of warheads on it, only count as one deployed strategic warhead. Now, if anything, the limits just tell Russia how many weapons they are allowed to add to their strategic nuclear force. Why would the administration enter into a bilateral treaty that only requires the United States to make sacrifices? This is not acceptable. New START offers us nothing in return, not even a robust verification mechanism that enables us to make sure Russia is keeping its promises. President Ronald Reagan regularly repeated the phrase, "Trust but verify." He did it repeatedly regarding nuclear weapons. The verification measures play an important role in analyzing the New START. The New START has a weak verification regime. Former Secretary of State James Baker made the exact point by indicating that the New START verification provisions, he said, were weaker than the original START. Under New START, the United States would be limited to 18 inspections per year, as opposed to at least 28 in the past. Under the original START treaty, the United States conducted approximately 600 inspections. Under New START, the United States is limited to a maximum of 180 inspections. This further plays into Russia's favor due to there being 35 Russian facilities compared to only 17 U.S. facilities to inspect. The administration also dropped two key provisions from New START. The United States will no longer have continuous monitoring at the Russian nuclear missile assembly plant. We had it in START 1. Why are we giving up this important verification component in New START? The United States will also not have full access to Russian ballistic missile launch telemetry under New START. Under START 1, we had unrestricted access. Why are we giving that up? The treaty does not provide us with the verification mechanisms that enables us to make sure Russia is keeping its promises. Instead, there is a lot of trust and precious little verification. A weaker verification system is even more dangerous due to Russia's long history of non-compliance on arms control treaties. Russia has a record of non-compliance and violations under the original START treaty. Up until the end of the original START treaty in December of 2009, Russia was continuing to engage in compliance violations. The Department of State compliance reports from 2010 spells out the numerous violations made by the Russians. Finally, the treaty relies on the false premise that Russia is America's only nuclear rival. Now, this view of the world is outdated and simplistic. Even if we could trust Russia, there are numerous other threats, such as North Korea and Iran, which have repeatedly shown hostility to the United States and to our allies. We should never abandon our defenses and sacrifice our deterrent in the face of increasing international belligerence. It is the equivalent of asking America to stare down the barrel of a gun without knowing whether the gun is loaded, and then to trust the person holding it not to pull the trigger. In arguing for this treaty, the administration has tried to have it both ways. The treaty demands the United States reduce our nuclear strike force by specific numbers. Yet the administration has only offered a vague range of estimates regarding where these cuts would take place. The President's force structure plan provides up to 420 intercontinental ballistic missiles, 14 submarines carrying up to 240 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and up to 60 nuclear-capable heavy bombers. Even if the administration did cut the absolute maximum number of weapons it has proposed to cut, it would still fail to live up to the reductions demanded by New START. Instead of giving the Senate a specific force structure, the President is repeating his health care playbook and telling us to wait until after the U.S. ratifies the treaty to find out the details. It is wrong that the Senate is being considered to approve this treaty without knowing the details, and these details matter. The force structure of our nuclear triad is critical to maintaining an effective deterrent. The nuclear triad of the United States spans sea, air, and land. By working together, our nuclear triad complicates and deters any attempt at a successful first strike by anyone on our country. I believe the President's force structure proposal will weaken our nuclear triad. The American people, Madam President, deserve a full debate on the Senate floor on a treaty of this magnitude. It is my hope that the Senate will take its constitutional responsibility very seriously and provide the new